No one can tell you how you need to process the pain or the grief that you're going through. Healing looks different for everyone. But there are some biblical and practical ways to help manage and heal from and use the pain that we experience in this life so that our suffering won't be in vain. Welcome back to the Cassie Lou podcast. Today is the first episode of a 4-part series that we're going to be doing on how we can carry and manage mental and emotional pain in healthy ways. In this series, we're going to unpack part 1, which is today, how to acknowledge and process pain in healthy ways. Part 2 is going to be why it's crucial to understand God's perspective on suffering as we learn and grow through pain in this life. The third part is going to be how to extend empathy and compassion while we are still in the middle of the healing process. And the fourth part is going to be how to be a good steward of our pain instead of wasting it. I was going to do one big episode on this for everything that I've had on my heart regarding it, but I realized it would be way too long of an episode, so we're tackling this thing one step at a time. And listen, community plays a big part of the healing process. So if you're shouldering some pain or grief, then if you are willing and comfortable to just be a little bit of a voice for someone else who may be going through a similar thing, leave a comment below and just share a little bit about what you've been going through. You don't have to give a lot of details, just whatever you're comfortable with. But I have a feeling other people would benefit from it as well to know that they're not alone in their grief. So let's dive in. Today is part 1, which is we're going to be looking at how to acknowledge and process grief and pain in healthy ways. There are a lot of unhealthy ways. We're not going to list them out. We're just going to focus on the healthy ways today. So what does that even look like? Well, before anything else, we have to give ourselves permission to fully feel whatever it is that we feel. So don't try to restrict yourself to certain kinds of pain or levels of grief just because it's more accepted or understood by other people around you. Grief and suffering can be tied to anything. Of course, it can be things like a death. It could also be job loss. It could be family struggles. You could have or be going through a breakup, either romantic or friendship. There could be divorce, fear, depression, any mental health struggles. All of that can cause pain and grief and suffering that is just as deep as anyone else's. And they're valid, and you need to give yourself permission to feel those things. Give yourself permission to sit in the sun with your pain for a while. Invite it in. Give it its time. Give yourself time to heal as often as it takes. So this means that you need to stop trying to ignore it. I used to be really bad about that. Stop trying to make it go away by distracting yourself or telling yourself that you shouldn't be feeling it because it's illogical. I'm guilty of that a lot. You don't have to cater to it to an extreme level or more than what's healthy or needed, but you do need to give your emotions their time in the sun. Expose it to the light. Let it sit in warmth and acknowledge it for a little while. It's really important to be able to process things, to label and understand what it is that you're dealing with instead of just trying to shove it down and ignore its existence. Your pain isn't an enemy. It's an indicator that something traumatizing happened to you. In our society, we usually only get a limited amount of time to process or to unplug from everyone else for something major like a death, right? Usually from work, you get a certain amount of time off, things like that. It's not long enough to heal, but just to kind of step back for a little bit. However, if it's anything else, you usually don't get any time off. You have to just keep doing life, especially if you're a parent. You don't get to just unplug and take months off in order to heal. You have to get right back up and back in the game. And that's hard because a lot of times we just end up shoving down whatever it is we're feeling, thinking we'll deal with it later, and we never do. One crucial thing is when we do have to get back to life and we're still not healed, because it takes way longer than we have to give, is to still carve out time to process and to feel and to sit with your feelings. Mentally, you're just struggling to get by, but if you carve out time, whether it's every day, a few times a week, and just stop expecting yourself to just get over it and move on. maybe because the world expects you to. A lot of people will maybe try to tell you that you're spending too long thinking about this, or maybe the person you loved or the situation that you were in or whatever would just want you to get through it and get over it. Everyone's healing is different. It's true that you don't need to camp out there for long, but allow yourself the time to sit with it, or else it's going to fester inside. If you've not been given the time and space that you need to heal or to process the pain that you feel, you need to carve it out yourself. Whether it's at the end of the day or just a couple days a week, carve out time that you can focus on you, focus on your feelings, and to process it, pray about it. God knows, but we talked about this before. It is something very healing when we can go to God and bring Him everything that we're feeling and lay it at His feet. Spend that time with Him. He makes broken things beautiful. That's what He does. He says He will take everything and turn it out for good for those who love Him. And it also reminds me of the Japanese art where they take broken pottery and they use melted gold to put the pieces back together. And when you get done, it's this beautiful piece that you see all the cracks, but it's just there are these gold lines going all throughout the bowl. I think it's called kintsugi. We're going to go with that. It's beautiful. It reminds me of that. God just takes everything that's broken in us. And maybe it's not right away. Of course, it's going to be over time. But He just takes it and uses His light, and He just creates this beautiful masterpiece out of it. Just be really careful not to stay and camp out with that pain for too long, for longer than it's needed, because that is a really good way to get stuck. You need to feel it, but then you need to work on moving it out. It's not there to live with you. It's there to visit for a short amount of time. And if you don't, it's actually going to impede your healing, but that's a different matter. We'll talk about it later. Just kind of keep that in mind whenever you're processing through these things. One really practical way to help avoid this is to set a timer. Whether a kitchen timer, the easiest is on your phone. Just don't get distracted by it. And set a timer maybe for 15 minutes. And then let yourself feel all of the things, whether you need to cry or yell, not at anybody. Go to yourself, yell into a pillow, something like that. And just let yourself feel all of the feelings for that set amount of time. And then when that timer goes off, don't stress about it. Just take a deep breath, release it. You had that time to let it all out, and you get up and you move forward with what you need to do. It's not suppressing it. It's not denying it. It's giving it a set amount of time. That means you are in control of that situation. You are allowing your emotions to be fully felt, but you're in control with how far they go. You are letting them have their time, but you are managing them. You are controlling your emotions instead of your emotions controlling you. I've done this before several times. I've been through pain. I've lost family members through the years. I've struggled through a previous marriage that ended in divorce. I've dealt with a lot of really heavy and absolutely pointless drama, and I've had my fair share of pain. Of course, there's more, but that's kind of the gist of it. And there's been several days between the grief and still being a mom and working and trying to keep it all together and still be who I need to be as a Christian woman that I just crumble. You know, you fall apart occasionally. You get overwhelmed and everything just piles up on you. And over the past 5 or 6 years, I've learned that on the really bad days, which thankfully is extremely rare now, what worked best for me in that exact moment of just the deepest pain that I was feeling is I would tell my now husband and my kids, look, I just need to go work through this. I need some time. I need to go rest. And of course, they'd be fine with it. I'd go in the bedroom. I'd shut the door. Sometimes I would set a timer. Sometimes I would, depending on what time of day it was, sometimes I'd just let myself rest. But I would crawl into bed in fetal position. I would grab my nearest stuffed animal, which, yes, I am almost 40 and I still love stuffed animals. You're welcome for that little peek behind the curtain. But I would just let myself cry and fuss it out with God if I needed to. He knows what I'm feeling anyway. There's no sense in hiding it from Him. And I would just let myself feel all the things, say all the things to God that I needed to, remind myself that this is my set aside time to be able to do this and that I'm in control of it. And a lot of times I would just cry myself to sleep. And that's not to be pitiful. That is a very cathartic thing to do, and it's safe. You're not taking it out on anyone else. You're not taking it out on yourself. You're giving yourself the space and time that your emotions need at that point. And a lot of times I would sleep for maybe an hour or two, and it's not a magic formula. It's not like all of a sudden I wake up and there's butterflies and rainbows everywhere and everything's just peachy keen. It would take a lot out of me. I would still be exhausted, but there would be a little bit more peace, a little bit more relief that I didn't have before. And I would be able to at least plug back into the day and go on from there. Things were at least manageable at that point. And you know what? This is actually a biblical way to do it. It's not the only way, but it is a biblical way. Because you know who else had a God-blessed pity party? Elijah. So in 1 Kings 18 and 19, I believe, just to set the stage real quick. So Elijah, the very famous prophet of God, super, super cool guy. If you haven't read it, go read it. It's awesome. Elijah just had a huge God moment where he went up against all the prophets of this false God, and God just sent down fire from heaven and showed up in a huge way. Elijah was the key character in this story, and everybody kind of realized that God is the one true God. It was great. Big victory for him. Well, right after that, Queen Jezebel, which we all know as the not so great girl, threatened his life. And he was terrified. He was exhausted, he was spent, and he was terrified, and he ran for his life. And he went and he fell asleep under a tree. And you know what God did? He sent an angel and he gave him food and he let him go to sleep. Elijah woke up. He did it again. He kept catering to his physical needs, knowing that he needed time. He needed to feel his feelings. He needed those basic biological needs met, the sleep, the rest, the nourishment, before he could go on to his next calling. So here's the thing. Yeah, big prophet of God, he was depressed. He was scared. He was fearful. He was anxious. All of the things that we feel all the time. And how did God tend to him? By meeting his basic needs, by giving him rest. The key is to remember this place isn't permanent. Elijah's place wasn't permanent. He still had work to do. It was a temporary rest stop. And that's what we have to give ourselves permission to take. After that, Elijah went on to experience God in amazing ways. He continued his prophetic calling, and his story continued. And your story will continue. It doesn't always feel like it, but it will. This is one chapter, one section of your story. And if you let God take this pain and use it and transform you through it, the rest of your story can be amazing as well. There was a key verse that I wanted to focus on kind of as a foundation for this. It's in 2 Corinthians 4:16 through 18. I'm going to turn to it. Come on. Of course, it's the 2 pages that are stuck together. Okay. It says, "Therefore we do not give up. Even though our outer person is being destroyed, or our inner person is being renewed day by day. For our momentary light affliction is producing for us an absolutely incomparable eternal weight of glory. So we do not focus on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal." So how do you start processing the pain so you can start embracing that inner renewal that it was talking about? The first way is realize that grief is biblical and God has not turned his back on you. The second is find your unique way of expressing it whenever you feel it rear its head. And the third is do not isolate yourself. Now, there is not a one-size-fits-all process for dealing with pain, and it's rarely linear. It usually goes all over the place and rears its head when you're not even thinking about it, and it can hit you upside the head when you're in the grocery store or when you're having a good time at the ballpark. It has no rhyme or reason, and it's no respecter of persons. It is random. But as long as you don't get a false notion of what it's supposed to look like when you're healing and are willing to embrace the messiness of the process, you can handle it a lot better. So the first part, the realizing that grief is biblical and that God's not picking on you. There is nothing wrong with you if you are still grieving, even if it's been a while since you've gone through the traumatic event. It doesn't mean God has turned his back on you because you're still hurting. It means you cared. It means you loved deeply. It means that something was significant in your life. And suffering actually produces a godliness in us and connects us with Christ closer than anything else we could really go through in this life. It's the closest that we look to Christ. It produces that godliness if we allow God to use it. Otherwise, we waste our pain, which we'll talk about in another episode. That's a little bit further down the series. There's even a book in the Old Testament called Lamentations that is chock full of suffering and wisdom in how to deal with it. Just an example, Lamentations 3:31 through 33. Let me flip to it real quick. I really should have had these things marked. That would have been smart. Well, Peaches, where's it at? Oh, there it is, found it. Okay. Okay, Lamentations 3:31 and 33, or 31 through 33. Says, "For the Lord will not reject us forever. Even if he causes suffering, he will show compassion, according to the abundance of his faithful love. For he does not enjoy bringing affliction or suffering on mankind." We're not going to get into all the theological nuances of all of that, because you could dig into it pretty far. But the main thing to look at here is that even if God allows the grief, he will be compassionate in it. Because he is faithful and he is love. He doesn't enjoy our pain, but he will very quickly use it for our good and his glory when we allow him to mold that in us. And one book that I highly recommend, like really recommend, a friend told me about a few years ago when I was going through a particularly dark time. And this is it. It is Dark Clouds and Deep Mercy by Mark Vroegop. I think is how you say his name. I need to really look up these pronunciations before I do this. Mark Vroegop, Dark Clouds and Deep Mercy. So you've got an actual book, and then you have a really cool devotional journal that goes along with it. It's really neat. It's looking at the biblical ties of just lamenting, thus Lamentations. It's looking at suffering in a godly sense. And it's not that there's a right or wrong way. It's talking about how to do it in a healthy way and using it the way that God intended. And actually, the foreword in here is by Joni Eareckson Tada, so you know that's a good book. And I wanted to read to you a part of it real quick. I'm just doing a lot of reading on here today. So on page 28, it says, so to lament, to like grieve, to cry out, that's what that means. He said, "You might think lament is the opposite of praise. It isn't. Instead, lament is a path to praise as we are led through our brokenness and disappointment. The space between brokenness and God's mercy is where the song is sung. Think of lament as the transition between pain and promise. It is the path from heartbreak to hope." Such a good book, man. And I'll put a link down below if y'all want to go and grab those, because they're really, really good. And here's the thing. Suffering is inevitable. It's going to happen. We live in a broken world. We're going to suffer. We're going to go through pain and loss. But it's what we do with it that reveals our character and makes us stronger so that we can grow and others can grow through it as well. We talked about it a minute ago, but deep intimacy with Christ can be formed in suffering. As a matter of fact, most of the people who are the closest to God got there in the middle of suffering. We're never able to relate to Christ more or to look like him more than when we're going through pain. And that's not to say that you want pain or that you try to go get pain. That would be crazy. But it's using it. Grief can strip away the superficial things that don't really matter and bring us to a place of this raw vulnerability. And we can empathize so much more with other people who suffer. And this makes us more relatable to them and more usable for God's kingdom. We point to Christ faster in our suffering than we even do in our joy. Other people watch us when we're grieving. They watch us when we're in pain and when we're suffering. And when we point back to God in the middle of it, that is a huge testimony, much more than if everything was going right for us. So the first way to deal with the pain in a healthy way is to realize it's biblical. God's not picking on you, okay? Another way is to find your unique way of expressing it. So you're letting it out of your brain. When things stay in your brain, you get more overwhelmed. That's why venting is helpful, or writing things out in a journal. You are getting it out of your head so that you can manage it and process it. It's the same way with grief, and it's healthy. Just thinking about it over and over again is not really working through it. Sometimes maybe, but it carries too much weight for that. That weight can eventually take its toll on us if we don't allow it an outlet. And for the sake of time, without getting into all the science behind this, but there is a good bit of science behind it, there are tangible outlets for grief that have been proven effective and crucial in the healing process. Some of them could be talking to someone you trust, whether it's a counselor or a friend. It could be journaling. It could be painting. It could be creating music. Maybe you're a musician. It could be exercising and working out. Exercising has been proven to really help with things like this. And here's the thing, if you're struggling 5 nights out of a week, run yourself a bubble bath 5 nights out of a week and have a good cry those 5 nights every time. If you need to go max out your weights at the gym and ramp up that energizing music in your ears as loud as it'll go 4 times this week instead of 3, and you have to push yourself because it's this outlet for you, then do it by all means. Do whatever it is that works on that inner part of you that's grieving. These things are cathartic. All of these things are healthy and cathartic. And we all know what that means, but of course, I looked it up because, that's what I do. So here's what the literal definition of cathartic actually is. It's providing psychological relief through the open expression of strong emotions. Grief is heavy, and relief is what we're after, right? It's not a band-aid, it's a release. When you're experiencing grief and you're allowing yourself to feel those strong emotions, and that in turn gives you the psychological relief needed for your mind to start accepting the new reality you're experiencing, that is what you're after. So the things that can be cathartic to you are what you need to tap into. You may say, I don't want to accept it. I get it, and that's okay. You'll get there eventually. You don't have to rush it. Give it time. Just be careful again not to dig your heels too deep into that statement, because it's a really good way to get stuck. The key is to have compassion on yourself. It is so important to have compassion for yourself, just like you would anyone else. It's not selfish to allow yourself to work through whatever it is that you need to, and to feel the things that you need to, and to do things that help give you that relief in your mind. And the third point I want to point out for this is probably the most important one, at least it was for when I was going through all these things. Do not isolate yourself, please. There is a time and a place where being alone and processing is fine, but you stay there too long and it will spiral, and it will keep you stuck, and it will shackle you to that grief. And that is Satan's goal. If he can keep you completely ineffective and keep you from growing, then he has won that battle. And you have got to get stubborn against that. Even in your pain, do not let him win. And we've all been there. We all wanted to go and crawl into our little cave and our little bubble when we're hurt and not see or interact with anyone. And again, it's fine for a little while. But the enemy loves to attack people who are alone, because he absolutely knows that it's 1,000,000 times more likely that we will spiral and get stuck if we isolate. Romans 12:15 says, rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. Galatians 6:2 says, carry one another's burdens. In this way you fulfill the law of Christ. 1 Corinthians 12:26 says, so if one member suffers, all of the members suffer with it. If one member is honored, all members rejoice with it. We're supposed to do life together. And if you don't have a group of like-minded people that you could kind of lean on each other, please start make it a point to look for those groups. Maybe it's Sunday school group, maybe it's a book club, or just a few friends. Just really look for people who are trustworthy, who are focused on Christ, and who are safe for you, and look for ways to start plugging in. Now, for just a second, I'm going to address a woman's favorite excuse for not doing that right now. I don't want to bother them with my problems. They already have so much going on. I've said it. I know you've said it. Probably every woman in the South has said it. I can pick on women in the South because I'm here. But we don't want to burden each other with our problems. It literally just said in scripture, carry one another's burdens. So even in that, we're not doing the right thing. We have to lean on each other. And I'm not just picking on the women. The man's favorite version, or the one I've heard, is it's not their problem. I can handle it on my own. I can handle it on my own. You can. You're probably not going to end up being a very healthy person on the other side of it if you do, though. If we are parts of the same body of Christ, that means that anytime there's suffering, everyone who is a part of that body suffers too. Maybe it's just because you're ineffective and you can't do the work that you need to do for the kingdom because you're stuck in the pain. Or maybe it's actually rubbing off on other people and they're being burdened by your continual pain and grief that you haven't let yourself heal from. Here's the thing. Don't you feel blessed when you've helped somebody else go through something hard? Well, so do they. It's not a weakness to need other people. It's human. Let's paint a mental picture here. God forbid, but say you're in a wreck and you have internal bleeding somewhere. And you're like, you know what? It's only in my leg, my hip, whatever. We're not going to worry about it. We're going to pretend like it doesn't exist. We're going to ignore it. I will just deal with the pain. I can handle it. Don't want to burden anyone else. Guess what happens if you don't fix that? Other body parts start getting affected. Maybe there's infection. Maybe your body just can't operate the way it needs to in a healthy way. The rest of your body is going to start feeling it. It is inevitable. Ignoring it is just delaying and worsening the issue. And our emotional and mental pain is no different. It's harsh, but it's true. And if you've ever met anyone who has not healed from a specific pain or trauma or wound, then you know exactly what I mean. Usually their entire personality starts to revolve around the trauma. It becomes their constant pain, like a burden that they're carrying on their back. A lot of times they'll use it as an excuse for poor behavior. Maybe they're always the victim and their relationships all around them suffer for it. A lot of times it can come out in anger or in constant depression. That's why it's crucial to let yourself heal and to lean on others you can trust while you process the pain. If you don't, if you suppress it, it will come out in other ways and usually in very unhealthy ways. You've heard the phrase before, I'm sure, hurt people hurt people. Very true. And if you're wanting to protect the people around you by not telling them what's going on with you, you are just delaying it and it will probably come out to them eventually anyway and end up burdening them in a different way. And that's not to be pessimistic, that's just calling a spade a spade. Another way you can avoid isolating yourself when you're in the healing process is to volunteer somewhere, serve somewhere. I know it's probably the last thing that you want to do when you're hurting, but I'm telling you there is something cathartic and extremely beneficial when you can pull yourself out of that little protective bubble just enough to serve someone else, to help someone else. It is an amazing relief on your mind, on your heart, even if it's temporary in that moment. The more you do it, a lot of times, the more it will bless you. But when you stay in that bubble of what I call survivor mode too long, you end up focusing so much on yourself that it becomes this selfish survivorship. And you are building a survival comfort zone that ends up being where you want to stay. And I found this is the absolute key to breaking that cycle when you get to that point. Get out there, serve, whether it's in your church, a local food bank, an animal shelter, or a nursing home. These places need volunteers all the time. And when you can get outside of your mind, outside of your pain for a little while, and help someone else, it helps heal you. I know there's some people out there that know exactly what I'm talking about. I've had my own experiences. If you know of a specific situation that you've experienced with that, please share it. I would love to hear it. God wired us this way to need each other, to want to help each other, because not only are we meeting needs, we are helping ourselves as well in the process. And look, I know this can be a lot. This is heavy stuff. but we all go through grief and suffering at some point in this life. And we can't just coast when we do. We need to know healthy ways of carrying these burdens, of growing through these burdens, and of using them. Feel the pain, get help if you need to, and know that you're going to probably have to repeat this process over and over again as you move forward, because grief and pain doesn't just go away. It'll hopefully get less and less often and maybe less and less severe as time goes on. But you need to block out time for it as you work through it, even if it's years down the road. So let's sum it up. Realize that grief is biblical. Find your unique way of expressing and working through the hurt whenever you feel it rear its head. And do not isolate yourself. Please don't isolate yourself. And even when you are alone, you're in your house, you're in your car, and you really feel the weight of it, Psalm 34:18 says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit," which is the best news we could possibly have. Now listen, next week we're going to get into part 2, which is why it's absolutely crucial to understand God's perspective on suffering as we learn and grow through the pain that we experience. We're all in this life thing together. So if you want to help, again, if you want to be a little bit of a voice for someone who may be struggling as well, please drop a comment below and just share a little bit of what you've carried before or are carrying now. Again, I bet you anything somebody else can relate to it. Let's pray for each other and encourage each other. I pray for every one of you guys. I'm so thankful for you. You really do help me out a ton just in, the little side comments that I've gotten before, the encouragement, just to keep trying to reach people. The whole reason that I do this is because a lot of this are things that I needed at certain points in my life that maybe I didn't have someone to encourage me in, not because they didn't care, mostly because they didn't know, because I isolated. Learn from experience there. It's things that I wish someone had been able to tell me, that I don't want anyone else to go through these things without hearing it from someone. And if you don't hear it from anybody that's close to you, please know that I am here and I'm reading every single comment that you put on here, or you can message me. I have, you go to my website, I have a way to contact me through there. Please feel free to do so. And listen, in the meantime, keep your chin up. There is another side to this. If I don't see you on here, you can also find me over on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. And at the very least, I'll see you in ink.